How long do you guys have? I respect your time. Do you have like 10 more minutes?
I got time for you, man.
Yeah.
As much as you need.
Oh, man.
That's beautiful.
An
You're
extra
special.
gift coming your way.
One of the things that I love about the Alpha Youth series is, and not that it's just for youth, but it's designed in a way, like Jason was talking about, that he could run it at high school with his friends, that it can be run by young people effectively. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that looks like?
Mm-hmm. Well, what we found is by changing the format a little bit, instead of having youth watch a whole talk and then try to lead the whole discussion afterwards, by changing the format in a couple key ways, it actually really empowered people who aren't necessarily really experienced small group discussion facilitators to engage in a way that actually trains them to be really good small group discussion facilitators. And so, and the format, the two things that I'll point out about the format that I'm really thankful for and we've seen really work is, one is we pause along the way for discussion. So you don't have to hold all the ideas in your head for those who are going to do the discussion. And for those who are facilitating it, it actually makes it easier because there's an end time. There's a real clear end point. You don't have to know how to pick up a conversation that's kind of, dragging on a little bit so well. You actually just, so what happens is you pause, the question comes up on the screen, you pause it, and you discuss that one question. And before it tanks, before the conversation starts dragging, you're like, okay, you kind of feel the ending coming. You go, okay, and then you press play again. You keep going. The other thing that we did, and both of these ideas we got from this series that we used when Jason was in high school called Quest, and the pauses. And then the other thing we did was interviews on the street with young adults, young people, answering the questions. And you can tell that the people answering the questions are not all coming from a Christian perspective. They're not all part of the church. They don't all have the same ideas. They have a variety of opinions on all faith topics. And you put those right in the series. One of the ones that I can think of right off the top of my head is, it's not a faith question necessarily, but right in the first episode, we say, hey, what makes you happy? And we interviewed a guy in LA and he says, oh, woman and marijuana. And then we kind of cut away a few more answers and we come back to him and he goes, woman who smoked marijuana, and you're kind of like, and to be honest, I was like, I had a few moments where I was like, are we actually putting this in? This is a Christian tool. This is for, to help kids learn about Jesus. And are we putting this in? And we were like, yes, of course we have to put it in because it helps frame it like, oh, I'm actually allowed to say things because there are things in the video that are said that I'm pretty confident the church doesn't agree with, but so I'm allowed to say things. So what all that combined to do is it gives language, it takes the pressure off the small group host so that teenagers or even adults who aren't that experienced, it makes it simpler. You could say, hey, which person did you resonate? What answer did you connect with the most? And you don't have to have like a whole list of skills and questions in your back pocket. You partner with the tool to just say, hey, the question's there. What do you guys think? And then the conversation fades off. You go back into it again. And over time, the group starts to actually just do it on their own.
Yeah, and what I love about what you just explained there is that's not just true of teenagers who'd be leading this. So I live in the Catholic space, and I'm trying to tell people all the time, you really need to work on small groups. Like, this is going to be a really critical part of your ministry, and they can see the value of it. But the problem is the vast majority of Catholics have never experienced a good small group experience. So now we're telling them to go run something that they themselves have never experienced. So with a tool like what you're talking about, it takes that pressure off and gives them training wheels in a sense.
I love that. And I think sometimes the best small group leaders are people who've never been to a Bible study. And I'm not trying to be offensive at all. But it's like sometimes we've learned that the Bible study leader's job is to do a ton of communicating. And that's a good skill for a good place. And so but in an Alpha small group, the goal is that people would be free to share. And so that we can train students to do that. So students, like, what's great is not all of us feel like we could actually lead a Bible study. I think more people can than we give credit. Not all of us feel like we could give a talk, but everyone can ask a few friends what they think. Hey, what do you think about this? What do you believe about this? And so in our church, we're just starting Alpha online. And it was last minute. So I'm just still work in progress on this. but we're coordinated. And then just before we launched, I realized, oh, students in our youth ministry should lead the small groups, not the leaders. And then we're like, okay, well, we need to train them. So here's what we did. We partnered one of our youth leaders with one grade 11 or 12 student. And we said, you guys are going to be a team of hosts and helpers together. And it's just for us, it's an idea to put ownership in the hands of our students. And the question is, do those students have to be like really, really solid Christians, all those things? Like, it doesn't hurt, but no, like they don't have to be at that place right now because we're leading it together. And we're saying the goal is that you host a really healthy conversation with everyone there. And then that's part of a whole pathway of seeing students even lead the whole thing with their friends. So during COVID, when the COVID hit, it was high school students were the first ones to go, my friends need community. These videos can help facilitate a conversation. I'm going to run my own alphas online. And we celebrate that. We celebrate when it's led by a nun in Ireland, when it's by a paid youth staff, when it's done by a priest, or when it's done by a high school student with their friends. And what's so cool, what we've been seeing all over the world, is students leading it in schools with their friends with permission. And then what we've done is we've created the whole back end, everything from how it's accessed online to the fact that it's free to the training that we provide, all the way down to how to get permission to do something like this if you're doing it in a public school. All of those things we've designed the training. So literally any student could go, I want to give this a go and have a pathway. The best case scenario though, is they've got an adult mentor in their life coaching and encouraging them, because there will be some hard days where the conversation feels tough. And is there an older friend that you can call and they can say, oh, I'm praying for you. I'm so proud of you. Way to go. Or like, hey, I don't know what to do to get food going. Here, I'm here to help you. And then all of a sudden we're raising leaders, not just consumers. And that's when this thing goes viral. And when I say this thing, I'm talking about the Christian movement, is when people are owners of this.
And one of the things we've noticed is that we designed Alpha to be for evangelization. It's like, it's for those who wouldn't call themselves Christians and who aren't already a part of the church. And so we want to use it to reach out. And so then we empower these young people to be the leaders and the facilitators. And what we're learning is actually the tool that we created to be for evangelization is actually really excellent for their own faith formation and discipleship, because their faith starts to come alive when their friend sits across from them and asks them a question. Hey, what about this? What do you think about this, about God or good and evil? They go home with a new impetus, a new desire to learn that for themselves. So their own journey of discovery and diving deeper into their faith comes alive when they start to own it for themselves. So that's why it's like, if they have an adult mentor, let them loose, put them in this position, because there's a greater sense of ownership. And on that journey, they're like, oh, my Muslim friend, they say they believe in Jesus, and they say they believe this and this and this. So what's different about what, the Christian faith teaches about Jesus? So I got to look at that, and go this and this and this. And it takes them on that journey for themselves. So it's really beautiful to see.
That's really good.
Yeah.
So one of the things too, I'd love for you guys to even talk about is the way, Ben, you can lean into the way in which faith deepens as you empower young people, but then even the way in which the faith deepens as they engage in partnering with the Holy Spirit, listening to Holy Spirit themselves and seeing their friends come to know Jesus. And if you have a story or something that you want to lean into that'd be really fun to hear.
I think there is a part of following Jesus where we have to actually do the stuff, like the mission stuff. Like he said to his disciples, go into the ends of the earth, like end of Matthew, make disciples, teach them what I taught you, do the things. And then he says, but don't be afraid, I'm going to be with you always. And so this promise of this being with you always, how is he with us always? By the power of the Holy Spirit, is the promise that meets the mission we're invited into. And I think somewhere along the line, there somehow we've participated in a version of our Christian faith that doesn't demand the mission, the activity, the doing, the loving our neighbor, serving the poor, sharing our faith. And when we have a version of Christianity that doesn't actually involve the mission, we actually are missing out on a key place where we meet the Holy Spirit, where we meet God. And so when we invite students, not on their own, not in an unsafe way, but along with us to actually do the work, and we've all seen it with our own life. When we stepped out and took a risk, our own walk with God grew deeper because he works on our heart. We encounter him there. We become more desperate in prayer. And so I just think the whole thing, like from the beginning, we see it in the way of Jesus. He wasn't waiting until people finished Bible college or seminary to send them out on mission. I love Bible culture. I love seminary. Go for it if you can. But he took these disciples that were totally going to make mistakes, and he knew it because he's God. He knows everything. And he knew they were going to make mistakes. He knew they were going to fumble. He says, get out there and do it. And then they came back to him, and it deepened their relationship and their dependency on him and their understanding. So some interplay about being invited into the ministry and the mission that actually deepens our faith and grounds it.
And you mentioned the a new desperation in prayer, and I'm like, oh yeah, that happens when you're like, oh my goodness, like this is my friend. I just had this conversation, right? Or I have this thing tomorrow, and you start praying in a new way, and then you have another faith conversation, and it drives you back to the Lord again to say, okay, well, and you start praying for different things, and it pushes you to God in a really personal way, because you personally care about what's happening so much more than just kind of a general prayer for God bless my school. It's, no, this is my friend. I care about them. We've had these conversations now, and now I know even more about what they think and what they're going through. And so the prayer, the passion for calling out to God and asking him for help increases.
That's so good, guys. Hey, really appreciate you guys leaning in with us and speaking into this. And we're so thankful for you guys, especially in the way you pioneered something with Alpha, and that's blessing the whole church right now. Yeah. And then deepening the value of listening across the whole church too. So
yeah, keep up the good work, because we're going to want something else that's world changing in about another 5 years. So get to it. We hope that you've enjoyed this as much as we have. You've been listening to the Youth Ministry Mindset Podcast. Thanks again. We'll see you soon.
This has been the Youth Ministry Mindset Podcast, a limited series with voices from Alpha and YDisciple. To view the show notes from today's episode or to submit a question for our hosts, visit youthministrymindset.com. Be sure to stay connected with Alpha and YDisciple on social media. Connect with Alpha on Facebook at facebook.com/alpha, or head to their website at alphausa.org/youth. Connect with YDisciple at facebook.com/ydiscipleleader or at ydisciple.com. The Youth Ministry Mindset Podcast is sponsored by Net Ministries. Net Ministries, challenging young Catholics to love Christ and embrace the life of the church through retreat and discipleship ministry. 2.2 million young people reached since 1981. To learn more about the mission of Net Ministries or to book a Net retreat, visit netusa.org. We'll see you next time.